Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this 7th in the Red Alert series. My name is Sarah Craig, and I'm in the National Health Information Systems part of the Health Research Board. And the Health Research Board is delighted to be associated with these Red Alert events.
Thank you very much, Sarah. You're all very welcome to Science Gallery here in Dublin. We're delighted to be hosting this event this evening. As you heard there, it's in association with the Health Research Board, and we're going to explore rare forms of blindness. We have a great panel, as you heard, and I'll introduce them shortly, but I just want to flag that we will open the floor to questions at the end of the event. So if you have any in mind, you can either tweet us, all of our handles are above, or you can just throw your hand up and shout across the room later on. So now to our three panellists. First up, we've Avril Daly, who's the CEO of Retina International, which is an umbrella organisation that acts as a voice for 50 charities in 34 countries. She's the former CEO of the patient-led charity Fighting Blindness, and she herself was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, aged 22. I pronounced it correctly, thank you very much. Jane Farrar is the Professor of Genetics here at Trinity College in Dublin. Her research area of expertise involves the various types of retinal degenerative conditions. Also pronounced that correctly. And then finally, we've got John Delaney, who's the Senior Counselling Manager at Fighting Blindness. He was diagnosed with RP, which I've been told to abbreviate to, while still at school, and he's an accredited member of the Irish Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy. His research for his master's degree is in lived experience of people with sight loss caused by RP.
There are many forms of what we call inherited rare diseases, IRDs. Probably the most common is the condition retinitis pigmentosa, but then that's a catch-all term for a condition that starts in many cases with night blindness, so an inability to see in the dark. So coming into a room like this, not knowing where the step is, falling up the step or whatever, and then deterioration of the peripheral vision to tunnel vision. And I suppose with that, depending on the gene type and depending on the mutation, which Jane can talk about in much more detail, it's hard to know when the degeneration is going to happen. In most cases, it can be in your 30s, 40s, where there is a sudden drop in vision. And really, I suppose that's probably one of the more common forms of inherited retinal disease. There are other forms that affect children at a very young age. LCA is one of them, Leber's congenital amaurosis. Again, a condition that affects very young children. I think the symptoms are evident in some cases shortly after birth, and certainly at a very young age, very severe onset. And also there is a condition called Usher syndrome, which is RP, so the degeneration of the peripheral vision to tunnel vision, but an associated hearing loss. And there's 3 different types of that. And Stargardt's disease, which is a form of juvenile macular degeneration, which affects the central vision and will appear in, I suppose, childhood into the teenage years.
And the amazing thing that your eye is, we take it for granted far too much. So your eye is composed of a couple of 100 million cells. So you have about 150 million photoreceptors, which are sensitive to light, which is why you can see. But there are about 200 million cells in that beautiful eye that are doing this incredible job of taking in light and sending that light down your optic nerve. So those millions, 150 million photoreceptor cells converge on about 1 million nerve fibers in the optic nerve, which then send that message to your visual cortex in your brain, and you interpret the image in front of you, which is phenomenal. I mean, sometimes when I think about what vision is, I think it's totally and utterly amazing.
I would imagine I was diagnosed when I was 6 or 7. I was simply told that I was short-sighted. And at that age, that sufficed to a degree. But as time went by and the symptoms of sight loss became more severe, and I think Avril and Jane have alluded to them, your peripheral vision, you develop this tunnel vision, and my capacity to see at night was more, or in any dark area, was more or less negligible. Things that a young boy wants to do become difficult. So I can remember I had a great love of rugby. I really wanted to play rugby, and I did. And I couldn't understand how I could see the ball coming at me, and then suddenly it would disappear. Couldn't understand that. And then suddenly it would reappear over there, and all my teammates couldn't understand why I didn't catch it or I didn't intervene. So I think I actually got an official diagnosis when I was 19. At that stage, my father had passed away. My mother was busy looking after the family. And for the first time in my life, I went to see the ophthalmologist on my own. And he told me I had retinitis pigmentosa, and he told me what it meant. And one part of me fully expected to hear that. And another part of me was totally shocked. And I went to some of the 2 scientific days, most of which I didn't understand. But the reason that I went, and what I really enjoyed about it, was there were a lot of young people, clearly very talented, who were hugely enthusiastic about their subject, who felt a sense of they could do something, who were convinced that over time they could do something, and they generated a sense of hope. And that is really important, and I can't overstate that. Speaking as somebody who has effectively lost his sight, when I sit in a room full of clinicians who are hopeful about the future, I find that really buoys up my spirit, especially for the people who are coming behind me. And it's wonderful to see so many young people who are working in this area, who want to work in this area, who see a future and who see possibilities.
There is a lot of work going on globally in relation to trying to create better understanding of vision loss. Because I suppose what we're hoping the audience is learning from tonight is it's not a straightforward situation. There isn't just people who are completely blind and people who can see.
Because we can actually understand the cause of somebody's disease, we can design much more functional, much more targeted, much more potent therapeutics. Because like anything, if you understand the cause of a car engine that is broken down, there's no point in fixing the steering wheel if it turns out that it's actually the clutch that is gone, right? So it's exactly the same principle with a genetic eye condition. If you understand the cause of the mutation in a particular patient, in a particular group of patients with a particular condition, now you can say, I can start to design gene-based therapies or other types of therapies like cell therapies targeted towards that particular problem. And that's exactly what's happening globally.
But I think it's probably important for us all to get away from the view is that there is no normality. I mean, first of all, there's different amounts of vision, definitely, for everybody. But, and there are very common forms of vision loss, like age-related macular degeneration. So there's no normality. But then if you think of the huge array of different things, like, depression, like a whole array, almost everybody is actually carrying something.
100%, yeah.
And so if we stop thinking about the absolute perfect norm and instead think of people in a different way. They were all carrying something. Sometimes it's a little bit more obvious if you, for example, have a stick or something, it's a little more obvious. But it doesn't mean that the person sitting beside you on a bus is not carrying something that is even greater than that. Right? And I think it's our perception of that. We fit people into this normal, perfect zone. It's like celebrity status. They all have to look pretty, and that is not the reality for anybody on this planet. All of us will suffer from something. All of us, sorry, I use the word suffer. So, all of us will be affected. We'll have problems. And a lot of us will have very significant things that cause us to have to overcome them. They may be physical, they may be mental, they may be a combination. And we should stop thinking of people in a very black and white binary zone.
Yeah,
and think of all of the shades of grey that we all are affected by.
For me, in the Fighting Blindness, that organisation, I don't fight my blindness. I have a very good relationship with my blindness now. Otherwise, I'd be a bag of cats. I don't mind fighting the causes of blindness, which I think is a really good idea, because I think people should have that option. Because a sight, as Jane was saying, is a beautiful thing. And sometimes we can get stuck on language. From time to time, I might have to write an article or two, and I struggle with even how do I describe, is it a blind person or a person with a visual impairment?
Yeah.
And you go around asking people, how do
PC
I
brigade. Yeah.
So perhaps we need to chill out a bit, give each other a little bit of space, and try and figure this out together. Because, as Jane was saying, we look at the world and we interpret it in a certain way, and there can be narratives around it. So everyone is an individual. The more open we are to each other, we try to understand each other, empathise with each other, the greater the connection, the more connected we are, the more creative we become as a people, as a society, the greater the things that we can do.